He's like, oh, it's so cute. And I was like, at one point we were standing in front of a cop, and he's like, standing in front of a cop, and he's like, you can't see me. He's like, I can see you. You can't see me. You can't see me. He goes like, I can see you. He also went up to a random Asian couple. He's like, he was my mom and dad. We're having a great day in New York City. And they're like, if he's only on camera.
Got him.
Never let go, Jim. What? What? An Asian What?
Yeah. Hey Nick, that thing might ask you to flip it at some point. Yeah, it's defrosting. So if it does make sounds, the screen will probably say rotate or whatever. You flip it over. Defrost takes forever. How many? Dang. So today we got to talk about a bunch of stuff. And I'd like you to do 3 things at once. It is possible that we will have some free time at the end of the period. So I kind of want to maximize that free time by getting all the paper shuffling out of the way now. Do your warm-up. Take out your field trip slip if you have it. And then we'll need 3.4 and 3.5 today. I'm going to pee and I'll be right back. So do those 3 things at once, please.
Get away from me. Stop chasing me.
Why are wetlands
Kyle and this girl is sitting at like a park, and I like really like being friends with her. Do you see the beer pong one? What? You see the beer pong video? Oh. Alright, can I just like oh, that's funny. That must have taken like I wonder how many takes that was. That was one long take, you know that? There was no cut. The whole thing. Oh, what is that? Who is that? That's girlfriend. She moved in has 6 months ago. Come on, take her out. Come on, David. Come on, Casino.
It's like kind of but like
all right.
What you're doing right
Excuse me. Excuse me. Anybody here need me to stamp their 3.5 because they were absent on Friday and didn't get it? Please come up and do that now. Anybody have a wanted poster that they haven't turned in yet because they were late or absent on the day that it's due? Thursday?
Our posters up there?
No, they won't be up there for a while. I have an arrangement with the art teachers to talk about how to develop a rubric based on your work, so it'll be later. Yeah?
Oh, so the grades that we give each other on our permit, right? You still...
They are.
Okay.
The average of those grades will be your final grade for that assignment.
I don't like the way it's looking at you. I'm going to say you're always one of those people.
Okay, next. Excuse me. I'm sure you already did this, but if for some reason you forgot, please give the parent letter to your parents. If you've lost your copy, it's in the back. Please give this letter to your parents. It may help explain your horrible grade, and that's in your best interest. But remember that I have a horse in this race too. I'm kind of stressed out about the financial situation, so maybe if you could please find a way to just sort of give your parents a letter, I'd appreciate that. I've changed something on the calendar. I think you know that there's a, what's it called? A PSAT tomorrow. If you're a senior, I don't know. They don't tell me that. So I know that you have questions if you're a senior, but I don't know what you're supposed to do.
Are they testing in here?
Yes.
So, will someone be taking our attendance?
I will not.
We're not testing in here.
Let's say class is testing.
I have students using this room for testing. I believe the Roberta and I's second or third period class. And so they come here and I give them a test and they're strangers to me and I don't know anything about you. Yeah.
So you not have to come to class.
It is my understanding that as a fundamental rule, you must always be on campus if it's a school day. There is no time when... Yeah, please, thank you. There is no time when any student is excused and others are not. So like during your senior assemblies, all the other students have to do schoolwork. During all their testing, all you seniors got to be on campus somewhere. But not this room, because I don't have a way to take your attendance, and I don't know where you're supposed to go. Maybe in my box they'll give me a poster so you could check in, and if I have directions, I'll tell you. But right now, I just don't have directions. I'm sorry. What I do know is this. We had planned to go over the Unit 2 exam today and then do the finishing Unit 3 tomorrow. But I made an executive decision because most of you would not have been here, periods 1, 2, 3 would have missed the end of Unit 3, and then you would have had a really impacted review day on Thursday before the exam on Friday. I've decided already that we'll go over the exam tomorrow so that we can at least finish Unit 3 today, and I can make myself available to answer any last study goals and vocab since that gets you ready for Friday. Then tomorrow, we will do the PSAT periods 1, 2, 3, and periods 4, 5, 6, I'll go over the exam. If you'd like to attend periods 4, 5, 6, then you can see your exam during the afternoon tomorrow after the testing. You know, you can still see your exam during lunch, like on Thursday, and you can still make an appointment with me to see your exam some other time. It just seems like we have more wiggle room with the exams than we're finishing the unit, so I swapped yesterday for today. So for today, I'd like to talk about the field trip, and then I'd like to talk about succession. Before I get started on the field trip, how many of you did not go yesterday? So, haha, we all laugh at you because we went swimming in the ocean and it was nice. The weather was right. We got some fresh air. Haha. And students who went on the field trip, I need some really... I honestly need advice. I don't know if you guys realize that field trips are politically really costly around here. There are a lot of teachers who've been struggling with their classes, and by signing you out yesterday, a lot of those teachers are kind of bummed that they couldn't do their class because you were on my trip. It cost me about $550 to do that yesterday. I mean, it doesn't cost me anything. It cost last year's parents about $550 for you to go. And it'll cost your parents about $550 for next year's kids to go. So politically, it's a hassle, and it hurts me on campus. Economically, it's challenging, and I really got to know, like, if it's worth anything to you. So my question is this. Academically speaking, because I know that everybody loves being off campus. I do too. No less, Sherlock. We all get that. But academically speaking, yesterday was great. I learned a lot. That seems like a really good use of my school day. Or, you know, there was some curriculum there, but I missed other classes, and all things considered, it's hard to tell. Or that I didn't learn enough to justify the amount of school I missed, and I should have stayed on campus. Okay, thanks. So, about the field trip, I don't know if you have your little slip, but I'm basically going to read through it in order, because that's the order in which we went on our walk yesterday. Starting at the airport, we talked about habitat value. And you know, Andrew gave me a really good analogy that I only got to use once yesterday, but I want to use it again. When people look at a grove of eucalyptus trees, or a field of corn, or a big old park covered in grass, a lot of people say, hey, those are plants, that's habitat. A lot of people will look at the forest of eucalyptus trees and say, look at that, there's such a big old forest. Or look at that huge field of grass, it's so green and that makes oxygen. But you're all environmental science teachers and you should know better. Because I think you understand that a monoculture meaning a big farm of one thing, like a cornfield or a football field or a forest of eucalyptus, that monoculture, because there's only one species, that's not a lot of diversity. When the eucalyptus doesn't have flowers, there's no flowers in your forest. When the corn is dry, there's no green material. That grass is mowed every day and never flowers and never has its full life cycle. So remember, those man-made or managed monocultures have very little habitat value. They're useful if you like eucalyptus or corn or grass, but that's it. A good analogy that Andrew gave me is most of those landscapes are like the suburbs. Everywhere you look, the same thing. Suburbs are cool, you know, if you want to keep the kids safe and let them play behind the white picket fence. There's some people who like the suburb. Just like there are some species that like monocultures. But his analogy was a really good one. He says, if you look around the airport site, you'll notice we have a diversity of species. Those are all dry and falling over. And those are just sprouting. And those have flowers and these have seeds. And those are tall and these are short. When you look around a diverse landscape, that does have habitat value. Because the bird who eats the seeds has something to eat at the airport, and the bird who eats the flowers has something to eat at the airport, and the bird who likes the bugs has something to eat at the airport. Instead of being like the suburbs, the airport, ecologically speaking, is like the city center of a big city. It's like downtown Los Angeles, or downtown San Francisco, or downtown Manhattan. Those sort of places have something for everyone. You can find a place to eat at 3 in the morning, not in the suburbs, but yes, in the city. You can find a niche record store that specializes on vinyl punk recordings. Because there's a little something for everybody in the city. I want to remind you that habitat restoration is about increasing the habitat value, offering something for everyone, like the downtown center of a city. His analogy is man-made monocultures are like the suburbs. They're fine if that's what you're looking for, but that's all you're going to get. Versus diversified natural habitats, which have a diversity of different things, a little something for everybody. Next. Does anybody remember what you call it when you're going to trade something good in exchange for doing something bad? That's right. Those of you who didn't go on the field trip, you might not know this vocab term. It also comes up in the reading packet, but there's this principle called mitigation, to mitigate, where you trade something good for doing something harmful. The airport had to move the runway a little bit, so they extended the asphalt and had to reroute a creek. And the state says, ooh, if you're going to mess up 20 acres of the creek, you got to give us 80 acres of man-made habitat. A 4-to-1 ratio, because man-made habitat is never as good as natural habitat, and we all realize that. So mitigation is the trading, and the ratio takes into consideration how valuable the natural things lost versus how good can be the outcome of something man-made. Offset ratio, 4-to-1 usually, 5-to-1 sometimes, 3-to-1 sometimes. One of the interesting conversations that we had at the airport is about how to decide what we're going to grow there. Because you guys realize that before the airport moved that stuff, they're not the ones who messed it up. The previous owner, the U.S. military, made a huge landfill there. before that, I think that was a farm. And before it was a farm, that was used to slaughter whales. The farmers cut down any trees to let the cows eat grass. The people who rendered fat at Goleta Beach would make giant wood fires. And so they erased all the wood. The Chumash Indians, way back in the day, they would start fires so it was easier to hunt the deer. To remove their cover. So how do we know, like, which version of nature are we restoring? Are we restoring to before the airport got there, before the military got there, before the whale fat industry came to Goleta, before the Spaniards got there, who used to grow food out there and ranch out there, maybe before the Chumash got there? Like, what's our target? And so the airport just goes for maximum habitat value. They want to offer the most plant diversity and the most habitat diversity they can possibly make. There were some details. For those of you who are really interested in restoration, if this is one of the jobs you're looking at, and I should mention that habitat restoration is probably one of the most sought after jobs. A large percentage of people who graduate with environmental science degrees go into restoration. It's a growing field, just so you know. So if you're interested, pun intended. If you want to get into the restoration details, first of all, you might know Andrew and I were saying about how all the seeds were collected so that they would be genetically local. It's really important that we not introduce genes that are from far away, because it would dilute our local genes. Also, a little detail for the nerds. We do what's called hardening off or supplemental irrigation, where we water the plants for a few years until their populations are well enough established that we can leave them alone even in a drought. Yeah.
What's bad about diluting your own gene?
Well, it's a slightly esoteric argument, but remember that evolution is always happening. And so, even if this is the same species as that, these are adapted to rainy summers because in Santa Cruz you get some coastal rain every summer. But these in Santa Barbara are adapted to the very arid summers of Santa Barbara. They're technically the same species. But maybe these are a little tougher, a little scrawnier, they make deeper roots or something. These are the same species, they would probably work. But they're not going to be as well suited as the natives. They are always well adapted because they're always evolving to that specific set of selective pressures, which is different in different parts of California, so we want to keep the local genes there. Yeah?
So when they made the man-made creek, when they had to reroute it, did it actually develop okay?
I've never been up close to it because no matter how much security clearance I get, I can't walk out on the runway. I've seen the part where it turns from Hollister, like near Los Carneros and Hollister. If you walk down Hollister toward the elephant bar, like halfway, you can look through the fence. There's like a little bridge where the creek goes under Hollister, and so you can see the railing, and so you'll know where the water is. And if you get out and you look at that bridge, you can see the creek goes, and it like zags very sharply. As far as I know, that's all doing the water drainage thing, but I don't know ecologically how that space has been functioning. You know, it's kind of interesting. Creeks are really delicate, but as long as the water flows the same way, the rest of the system seems to be just dialed into the water.
Yeah.
If you can protect the hydrodynamics of the creek, the ecology of the creek almost is a foregone conclusion. It's a byproduct.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering. Within creeks is fabulous.
Yeah, exactly. And it is all about that flow rate. You know, if there's more percolation right there, then the water will just like sink into the ground, and that can be a problem. And there are a lot of details, but I'm guessing they managed that pretty well. That Andrew dude, That guy kind of knows his business, man. It's pretty amazing. He's got like a really level head, and everybody who's worked with him is like, that guy's a tack driver. Like every little detail all the way in. Yeah. So one of the things that we also saw over there is the rest of the community has moved in. Don't forget that at the airport, we can't plant everything. You be quiet. Hey, are you dying?
A little bit.
There's water in the fridge, dude. Remember that. If you're going to explode, please make a mess outside. Tertiary succession is the rest of the community. You can only plant so many things. Out of 10,000 species that could live there, you plant the most important 100. And you hope that those will open the door to the others. We're starting to see in the airport the return of some species which were not planted by the restoration crew. We're here now. We're somewhere in tertiary succession. Most of the species there are successfully setting their own seeds and sprouting on their own. That's a really good sign. And many parts of the community are returning to the site even if they weren't planted by people. That's another really good sign. We're somewhere in tertiary succession out there. They're going to stop calling it a restoration project next year, I guess, and it goes back to being habitat. One last thing that we saw at the airport is the estuary, that place where Tecolollito Creek goes out through the airport. And you might remember that Andrew and I had kind of a nerd conversation about the timing of the water. For a long time, the city of Goleta used to blow out the sandbar the way that we dredge the harbor. They used to blow out the sandbar so that Tecolollito Creek always had fresh water going out or salt water coming in, depending on the tide. But when all that water has to slow down, it slowly builds a sandbar that eventually will block the flow of water. Back in the day, the city used to pay people to go get rid of the sand so the water would drain. But now they're using a different philosophy. They know that storms will flush out the sand or swell will sweep away the sand. So now they're making it what's called a seasonal estuary. This is new information to me. I just found out these news yesterday talking to Andrew in that parking lot. That estuary is now managed as a seasonal estuary, which means if the sandbar builds up, we're going to leave it to the baby Jesus to knock it down. So now, we go for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of isolation. And it was news to me, but apparently that period of it being all fresh water, with the salt water kept out, that somehow, and I don't get the details, is beneficial to salmon. Something about the ecosystem having more time as fresh water, it gets more the right kind of bugs or more little fish. I don't understand. I don't know.
Are salmon even around here?
Oh yeah, the steelhead salmon go up that creek for sure. Paul Forster took a really cool photo of steelhead up on Rattlesnake. Yeah, they're pretty rare up there. Last year we got 6, but that's a lot better than none. Historically, people used to be able to hook them out of the water with a gaff. So you could just stand over by the rocks, and when they would come into the pool, they would just gaff them, and they wouldn't even need to use rod and reel for it. I've seen photographs of people that went out for the afternoon. They come back with like 4 big steelhead, like big steelhead. Yeah, we used to have a lot of salmon. That's why we used to have a lot of grizzly bears here. Okay, anybody want to talk more about the airport? Around the lagoon yesterday, we saw unbelievable diversity of birds. I talked again about the habitat value. We compared the grass where we took a break to the island of little habitat pockets around the lagoon. We talked about controlling runoff, how most of the university just dumps straight into the lagoon. Remember we talked about the Trail of Tears and everybody's nasty Monday morning funk getting swept into that lagoon? And then, after we walked around the lagoon a little bit, we could see some algae blooms algae mats on the surface. Then we walked up to Manzanita Village, and up there you can see where the runoff is better managed by man-made wetlands called bioswales to prevent eutrophication in the lagoon and in the ocean. There are man-made wetlands that work like the sponge effect. You should remember this. They moderate the flow of water, they prevent flooding, they filter the water, and then they extend the flow to be a trickle over a long time instead of a brief flood. That's a bioswale. Yeah.
Like a gutter.
It was that vegetated gutter, exactly. It was between the grass and the downhill. Will?
Are they going to build more bioswales instead of the primitive design that
It depends who you ask. You know, your average shopping center, they're like, bottom line, bro, gutters cheaper, they go to gutters. But in areas where people care about water quality, bioswales are becoming really common, and they're often required by environmental reviews. So, for example, if you're going to build on the California coastline, you have to go through what's called the California Coastal Commission that manages development of the coast. And they won't let you do anything without a bioswale. It's become a total requirement. Like, you can't put in an application if you don't have natural runoff controls.
Are they going to do it for the older areas of UCSB?
It wouldn't surprise me because UCSB has always been really proactive on environmental issues. You know, we have the Brennan School of Environmental Science there.
Yeah.
It's a super environmental community with Garrett Hardin having taught there and stuff. Like, they have a heritage for this. But I am seeing that more and more, and I talk to people who work in restoration, and they're all working on bioswales. There's a lot of farmers that are putting in bioswales because it lowers their pollution fines. You know, if you dump a bunch of fertilizer into the ocean, you get busted. Even if you just dump it off your land, you get busted. But if you put a little bioswale, which for a farmer is pretty easy since they have all the dirt and the tools, it's not a big deal to just cut a gutter and let stuff grow there. Those plants will filter out the nutrients, so by the time the water leaves the farm, it's pretty clean. So it's extremely common on farms now. Bioswales are almost like a fad for farmers. Plus, it offers wildlife habitat, which helps lower pest problems and stuff. It's like a win-win scenario. Okay, we talked about how living stuff filters that water, so when living things solve a problem, it's called bioremediation. We saw a vernal pool, which was not a pool at all. It was all dried out. You remember when we walked over that gray deck, and everything was all gray and dried out on both sides? That is a vernal pool. Remember, if you're on campus around graduation time, that area will be firing. Totally beautiful. What's up, homie? What are you doing, Doug? Yes, you are.
Say hi, but how do you guys know?
What happened?
Did everyone come back yesterday? No broken bones?
I think so. I forgot the head count, so it's pretty close. I haven't heard the problem. What are you doing? Sit down, sit down, learn some things. You want to eat some burrito? No, it's good. You want to take a little burrito back? Yeah, alright.
Oh, yeah, about that. There's little things that make us feel.
I'll take one too.
Broadcast burrito?
I don't teach, Doug. I chat. What? Kids, are you losing any instruction right now? Does this bother you?
It bothers me that, we're not getting burrito.
That you're not getting burrito?
We've been here for 2 months. What else do you come with that?
I have known Doug a little longer than 2 months, but also he's much more good looking. Much.
That's true.
And he watches my baby?
Yeah, they are angels. Oh, breakfast.
Yeah, thanks, homie. A little spicy. You want a little spicy? Okay.
That was very generous.
What's that?
So that was very generous.
Oh man, if I wasn't starving, I would like to share. It's a slippery slope. When I share the food with the kids, you know, you guys all have like a lot of gut to fill. So I don't know, man. This would be a lot of food.
Wait.
You can just smell my breath. How about that? I'll eat, and then you can like lick the plate.
No, I was just saying that was nice of you to give him half. That's pretty.
It's not quite
I
half.
would never give anyone.
And that dude is such a bro. Like, anybody who doesn't like Mr. Carmian has no taste in teachers. That dude is such a bro. Right. Yeah, he used to teach for the Matt Academy, but this year he decided no more because your parents are kind of hard to work with sometimes. I don't know if you're aware of that. He teaches junior and senior English. And he is like an amazing man. Totally amazing. And some of you had his wife as a teacher? Somebody say that? PJ? PJ's super rad. She's aggro. That woman plays soccer like really hardcore. Like, I'm from a soccer culture. I grew up playing soccer every day of my life. And she and I will, like, every time we're at the beach, we like scramble a little ball around. And man, she's serious. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She plays a really physical game, which is cool. I play a physical game too, so right on.
I just imagine you and some guy's wife just do.
Oh, you know, she has a brother. She has a brother who's kind of a bully, and I guess I'm kind of a bully physically. You notice I slap people all the time and like bump into people. It's sort of like a. In my country, we have a lot of physical affection, and in this country, you don't. So I have all this pent-up physicality that I can't express because that would make me like not an American appreciated sort of thing. And so, you know, I was really scarred because when I went to the supermarket with my father the first time we came to the United States, he walked up to a shopping cart that had a baby and was like, ooh, 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 like tickling the kid or something, or like tickling his belly or something. And like the mom of the baby turned around and like screamed, and my dad got tooled. And I was like, whoa, people don't touch here.
That's so weird.
And I remember that explanation, like, about how people really don't touch here. And in my country, we're, like, extremely physical. So anyways.
Like, I noticed in, like, Costa Rica, if you, like, hug a guy in the United States, there's always the... It's like,
bro pat.
Yeah, the bro pat.
Yeah.
And when I was leaving Costa Rica, one of the guys who was just like a Tico native, Michael, like when we were saying goodbye, just gave me like the warmest hug I've ever had. It was like,
Yeah.
just like no
Hug like a
hug.
man.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not done though. Sorry. That was so many interruptions that you might have thought we're done, but we're not done. After the dried up vernal pool, we saw some solarized ice plant. You remember that black plastic that was laid down to cook all the stuff underneath? And then we talked about the tidal interface habitat, the space between low tide and high tide, which in the UCSB lagoon has been lost